some great fun.
Well, it's wonderful to have you back, Alex.
I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back. It's been a few weeks
Yeah, it has.
since I've been on, so I'm glad to be back on. It is definitely the time of year now that the Café con Leche is no longer iced. When I left, it was an iced Café con Leche.
So I think last week when Michael and I were hosting was still cool, and I said we don't have to put ice anymore. So we remember,
exactly.
but we remember the Café con Leche.
Café con Leche. Now it's a normal.
Yeah, normal.
Get warm.
Steamy.
Did a nice one from Guajiros, and you will not regret it.
Yeah, those are good. I have to admit, those are very, very good.
It.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I forget. I was talking to a good friend of mine who lives in not Montana. Can't remember exactly. Way up west in the north. No.
Seattle.
No. Anyway. But she remembers having café con leches with leche condensada inside, right? Because I think one part of her family was Puerto Rican, the other one was Irish. So it was just wonderful to always hear how she always grew up with café con leche, but with leche condensada, not just So she didn't have to put sugar; she put the leche condensada. So we always talk about it.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Was this Utah?
Utah.
Okay,
Utah.
I know what this is. Yeah. Utah.
Yeah.
Utah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a beautiful day for it. We got a great guest coming up on the show.
Yes,
We're going to be joined very shortly by Meredith McCrite. She's the owner of Magnolia Rabbit Design Company. Great name.
It really is. I was just going to say that. That's one of the questions.
How that
came about.
And then later in the show, we're going to talk some finance. We'll talk mortgages. We'll talk opportunities for Latinos. We'll do a little. We'll get a little Spanish in there as well.
Oh, okay. Wow. You should have told me. I would have brought my dictionary.
The news. We'll talk some markets. We'll talk what's going on. There's a lot. There's a lot
going on
since
today.
Our last finance segment.
It's been a long. Yeah, you and I haven't spoken finance for a long time.
For a little while, because I did a finance segment with
Michael. Yeah.
In fact, two probably since the last time you and I did one. So we'll have a lot to cover.
Do.
There's always news. There's always finance news. So that's going to be coming up shortly. We look. Be sure to send us any questions, comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
don't forget to share and like and subscribe.
Exactly.
I'm supposed to say that later, right? I mean, that's my line for later.
That's your line for later? Well, I'm reminding you.
Okay, See if I get it right.
Practice early for the like, share,
makes
subscribe.
Perfect.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're very excited to have you joining us this morning on a brisk morning, fall morning.
And welcome back, Alex. Nice to have you back.
Glad to be back. Always love being here on.
I can see you have your café con leche over there.
I have my water, so I'm trying to.
Trying to cut down.
Good. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be good. But it is a beautiful day.
That's a gorgeous day.
Get your café con leche, get to a nice, warm, and cozy place, and watch or listen to some Today y Mañana. So we definitely look forward to it. We got a great show lined up for you this morning. We're going to be joined shortly in the show by Meredith McCrite. She is the owner of Magnolia Rabbit Design Company. So we're going to be talking to her. We're going to be talking some marketing, some branding, some website design.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
A lot of different things.
All which is definitely important in today's world.
Absolutely, very necessary. And then later in the show, we'll have some finance.
Yeah, we'll talk a little finance.
We'll be talking, so be sure to send us any questions, comments about our guests. We love reading the great comments about how great our guests are, and any finance questions you have, Dave and I can try to.
We'll try. We'll do our best.
We'll do our best later in the show as well. Dr. Elizabeth Erpe watching the show this morning, so thanks for joining us. I see Nicholas Erpe has tuned in. Matthias Yohn says, "Good morning, friends." Matthias, good morning.
Good morning.
Great friend and partner of the show is Matthias. Speaking of which, big thank you to our partners such as Matthias.
Absolutely.
Matthias Yohn Realty, Credit Sirius Insurance, Tassel Hill Cider, Forward Adelante. Love, of course, thank you to Emergent Financial Services for presenting. Love being here on the Out of Network set. Judah behind the camera, always making us look good.
Absolutely. And don't forget, to like, share, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
You know, thank God they don't add more stuff. I mean,
I know. Otherwise,
it gets bigger and bigger.
We try to
someday
keep the
they'll be
short.
Okay.
We try to keep it short. You know,
I see that all the time now because your mom loves to watch sometimes on YouTube things that she enjoys, and you can see there it's like, and the first thing they say is, "Don't forget to," and they have their little finger says, "Don't forget to hit the subscribe button."
Yep. Yeah, I know. Now they even point
exactly
point to the subscribe button, which is always funny to see that one pop in, and. A little shout out. We happened this weekend. We went once again to the Unlocked History.
Oh yeah, that was
we had Phil
that was
on the
great.
Show, several weeks ago, Phil Reese, the owner of Unlocked History, and we went to the Raven as a family. That was a lot of fun.
Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, that was. I tell you, if you've never done that, I had never done it before, and I'll be honest with you. Once I used to see, I know you went a few times, and I said. Escape room. I mean, come on, how much fun can that possibly be? But it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and then a little bit of stress because you have that time. And it's like you got to get going, and we got to solve this one, you got to solve that puzzle. So it was all good.
Yep, it was.
Yeah, I highly recommend that if you've never done it before, just try it.
Give it a shot.
It's amazing.
It's a great group event.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it with 7, but I mean, I've enjoyed it with 3, 4, 5.
Two is always necessary, though. I think.
One would be hard. One would be
pretty hard.
You need some extra brain power.
Absolutely.
Mind meld.
Every once in a while, somebody says, "Wait a minute, look at this." Oh, how about that? And I think that's important.
Exactly. So it's really a lot of fun. So we encourage people. Unlocked History Escape Room. He does a great job with those.
Oh, I mean, the things they came up with is like I was really amazed. It's like
and the clues,
the puzzles and the way things open. It's like. Wow, how did that happen?
I don't know the science behind it. I'm not
I don't either.
Figure that part out, the physics, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is.
It's pretty cool. So, and this is a great time of year to do the Edgar Allan Poe Raven one. It has the
That's a good one.
spookiness.
That's a good one.
For October. So really a great small business here in Charlottesville. And speaking of great small businesses, I think I'm excited to jump into today's fantastic entrepreneur.
And Meredith looks like she's excited and ready to go too.
Absolutely. So we are thrilled to welcome to the show this morning Meredith McCreight. She is the owner of Magnolia Rabbit Design Company. Meredith, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. So for those who haven't met you yet, maybe haven't heard of you yet, tell us start off with maybe a little bit about yourself and how you first kind of became interested in the marketing, branding, kind of design space.
And don't forget to add how that name came about.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Okay. But don't answer yet.
Okay. Well, I'm a Charlottesville native, so I grew up here. I went to college at Longwood University right down the road. Lived in Richmond for a couple years afterwards, and then I bounced around the country for a few years. So I went out to Phoenix, Arizona, Charleston, South Carolina, and Boston, Massachusetts before I came back. And when I was out in Phoenix, I think I was working in human resources. I have a degree in psychology, and I sort of wanted to do something with people, helping to guide people on their journeys. And I was at a nonprofit, and as you know, with nonprofits, it's sort of everyone wears a lot of hats.
Right.
And I remember getting pulled in to help with a lot of events with the marketing department. And then I would be making signs and designing things for them, and they were like, you should just come over and work with us. So I went over to the marketing department, and then I really got into design, and they sort of helped me take some classes to learn how to use software. But really the rest was self-taught, and I just knew that I wanted to go down the creative path. So I sort of tailored the rest of my career towards more creative stuff, but always in a marketing digital realm. So
interesting. And
now,
go ahead.
Do you have any niche, particular type of clients that you seem to gravitate towards?
I do. I work mostly with women who own their own businesses or aspire to own their own businesses. I do work with some businesses who are somewhat women-owned and have other men owners as well, but I just really like to have women in the room. I think that our voices have been quieted for a long time, and it's really important. So that's a real passion of mine, is to empower women to step into entrepreneurial roles.
And entrepreneur space, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So when did you decide to say, okay, I'm ready to kind of take these talents I've been working on in this career path and start my own business? And then how'd you come up with the name?
Sure. Well, so the renaming is new. I started the business in 2018. I was working as a design director at a firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and there was just a lot going on within the company, and a lot of our team was leaving, and so I just thought, hey, this is the time if I'm going to do it. I didn't have a real plan, and I had a lot of good contacts there, so I had some recruiter friends who set me up with contract jobs, and one of those required an LLC. And so he's like, can you have it set up by tomorrow? So I was like, okay. So I had just like somehow come up with the name Create Without Bounds, and that was my business name for the last 5 years. And then I recently wanted to go through the same process I go through with my clients and really authentically name the business for something that feels aligned for me. And I wanted it to relate to nature, and I love magnolia blooms. I love how they just burst forth, and they're big and bold and unapologetic, and they're pure. Like, they are a symbol of purity. And so getting to that authentic story that someone has that we weave through the business feels like that pure essence of stripping away the can'ts and shoulds and really getting down to what's real for that person. And then the rabbit part is, there's just a lot of like wily magic around rabbits and curiosity, and they're known for being really intuitive. And so I really like to encourage my clients to follow their intuition and trust their gut and make decisions based on that. So that's sort of how it came about.
Yeah, it's a great combination.
Absolutely, it really is.
It rolls off very nicely. It just gives you this. Yeah. I mean, the moment I read the name, I kind of just felt like this warm feeling. Like, okay, that's really nice. Yeah,
absolutely, because it's true. I mean, those magnolia trees, boy, when they bloom, it's like boom. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're impressive.
Yeah.
So I know that there's several, because I guess when people begin the journey of saying, all right, I'm ready to actually go in, think about how I market my firm. Having started our own, we kind of, at the very beginning, I think you go into entrepreneurship thinking, okay, I get to do this thing that I love. And then you rapidly realize, well, there's a lot of other things I have to do to get to do the thing that I love, one of which is marketing. And so, but people, of course, approach it different ways. What are some of the different, I guess, types of services that you can help people with?
Sure. Most of what I do is a big kind of start from the beginning brand and website project. Sometimes we just do brand, sometimes we just do website if they already have a solid brand. But the foundation of everything is figuring out what the story is and how do we weave that through everything that you do. So a lot of times people kind of know what they want to do and who they want to serve, but they have no idea how to create offerings and price them, and how to talk about their services. It's really hard for some people to promote themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
And get past that sort of imposter syndrome. So there's also a lot of coaching weaved in there to kind of get the clients to feel confident and step into their role. So that's the first part of it. But there are packages that include brand and web, several different levels of that. And I also have clients who are at a different place in their business and maybe don't have the budget for that type of engagement. And so I have templates that people can buy that are pretty much already created websites, and they are tailored to women's service businesses like coaches, therapists, healers of that. Kind of stuff.
When we think of digital marketing, so would that include things like Instagram and Facebook and any other LinkedIn or things of that sort? Is that also where you help your clients kind of distinguish themselves?
Yeah, I do like to help them get set up with how they're going to talk about themselves and maybe a cadence of when do I post a helpful piece of advice, and then how many times do I ask for something. So balancing that education piece with the sales piece. But really, I like to empower them to manage that for themselves, because I think if it's your social media, people want to hear from you. Yeah. So I don't really like to do other people's social media, but I do like to set them up with the tools to create beautiful posts and to kind of know what they should be talking about.
Exactly. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Would you say, I've always been curious about this, and how would you kind of, as someone who's in this space, define like a brand? Like when someone thinks that, okay, I want to have my brand out there.
Sure.
How would you kind of say, all right, what are the things that go into that? Because I know sometimes a lot of people you'll be talking to someone and be like, yeah, I want to make my brand. And then they and I will be chatting like, what actually goes into that? What would you say are like the components that sort of make up what someone's brand is?
I love this question. So most of the time people just think, oh, it's a logo and maybe a tagline, and that is part of it, but it's so much more than that. So really your brand is it's what other people perceive when they see your logo or when they see you on social media, when they hear the business name. It's the emotions that they have tied to your business. And so creating that brand is really starting with the story and starting with what are your core values as a business? What do you stand for? How do you do business? What are some of your non-negotiables? And then how do you want to talk about what you do in a way that, drives home that story? So what impact are you having? And then we sort of do the visual stuff to complement that. So there might be a brand logo, there's a color palette, there's typography, because we want to have consistency, right? So every place that someone sees your stuff, whether it's your website, your social media, and printed materials, they want to immediately recognize it and be like, oh yeah, I've seen that before, and it's very consistent. So really the visual stuff is a complement to the underlying story. And I think people miss that a lot. They just think it's all visual.
Yeah, I make a logo and there's my brand.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it because it's true. Because you kind of need that consistency because you don't want conflicting sentiments. Like you don't want, like if you're a flower business and you want warm and fuzzy, you don't want to use that big impact TNT logo, like TNT font, like you might see on the side of a dynamite jar. So people might get, not giving me the same feeling as, the flowers, and especially if it's like blues and whites, and then you have a big red TNT logo. You imagine where someone would be like, that logo looks cool, but it looks cool, but does it complement what you actually want people to feel when they look at when they think about your brand?
Exactly. Yeah, because you could be like, oh, I love red, but if you have like a counseling business and you work with people who are going through trauma in their lives, red's probably not the color to choose. So, that's a huge piece of it, is sort of educating on like, hey, we want certain consumers to feel a softness when they come here, so we need the color palette and the typography and the photography to represent that.
Yeah. And probably more than ever today. I mean, like in the past, we didn't have, these phones. I mean, today everybody's on their phones, right? And flipping either through one type of social media or another. And to have that, that logo basically describe in itself who you are and what you do to a certain respect is so important, right? Than it was maybe back in the long.
People's first impressions may no longer be like find you in the yellow page. I mean, people's first impressions no longer I find you in the yellow pages and call. So their first impression would be your voice or walk in. So their first impression is your office. Now it's like the first impression is probably going to be your website or something that's been seen on social media. So
that's right.
Exactly.
That becomes not more important, but more important from a first impression perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be all about the business card, right? And now it's
That's right.
really all about the website and social media.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when someone calls, so let's say someone they're an entrepreneur, they're either starting up or they're in that phase of saying, okay, I need to put a little more into marketing, and they give you a call. What does the process kind of look like of how you would sort of work with them, decide what they need, and begin figuring out what their brand is?
Yeah. So I do offer a free 15-minute call just to see if we're a fit to work together. So we sort of assess where you're at, what your budget is, timing, and if that aligns for both of us. And then the next step I require for all of my packages is a consultation. And so it's called a big picture plan, and it's a 2-hour call with a follow-up detailed report of what I recommend for next steps. And so that'll basically give you exactly what you need to do to reach the goals that we've discussed that are important to your business. You can do that with me, or you can do that with someone else. So that's a paid consultation. If you choose one of my packages, that cost goes towards a package. If you don't, fine, it's yours to take wherever you want.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. I mean,
so a plan kind of develops first, and then you can kind of take it to one of your packages and say, okay, I want to go this plan towards just logo and branding. I want to take this plan towards a full website and things like that.
Yeah, because sometimes people don't need everything that's in a package, so it helps me create a customized package where I'm not selling them something they don't need, or they might need something that's not in there. But it also lays a blueprint for exactly what the scope will be, so it gives them an idea of, oh, this is a much bigger deal than I thought it was, or it's less than I thought it was, but usually it's more work than they thought it was. And it just gives them like an appreciation for what comes next, because then they realize, okay, this is going to take a couple months, and there's a lot going into it, and I need to be engaged in this. And so it's a nice like investment up front of not only money but energy and understanding like what their time investment is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I always find that very useful, because even in our business, when we do our consultation, which is the same thing, it's the first consultation is free. What I realize is that people sometimes don't really know exactly what they want and need. And by you sitting there with them, now you're getting more information from them, they're learning from you, and before you know it, they're like, wow, I didn't know this was possible. I didn't know we could do this, or I didn't know you could do this. And so, that's the beauty of having that consultation, is that it also opens up different roads and opens up ideas that they might have said, I didn't know that was even feasible or possible, and then say, hey, that's really the direction I want to go,
Absolutely. And I find a lot, too, that people don't realize they were missing some things that they need. And then when I ask those questions, they're sort of like, that is a good question, and we never thought of that, and we should. And I'm like, yes, this is cool. Like, that's what I love, is to like kind of see the client have an aha moment, but also just be like, oh, it's going to be so cool when we have that piece in place and we can confidently put our story out there and feel really good about it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's sort of that light bulb moment. It's almost like you're sort of helping them figure out what they need, rather than just saying, like, flat out telling them. Like, as they talk to you, it's like, oh yeah, I probably do need that.
Exactly.
And, they figure it out. Would you say, out of curiosity, that, and this just came to me, that your background, your original background, kind of in psychology, has kind of helps you when you're doing those consultations with people to kind of get to the root of what they're about and what they need and what their kind of values and goals are?
Absolutely. I am actually a certified coach, so I went through a coaching program in 2017, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I thought maybe I'd coach full time, and I did for a while have some coaching only clients, but it just occurred to me, hey, I need to weave this into the way I work with my brand and website clients, because it is all story based and it's emotionally driven. And there are those walls up, right, where we were talking about people kind of having that imposter syndrome and like fraud complex and needing to really step fully into it. And so breaking down those barriers is a huge part, and cracking into like, what do you really want to stand for? Who are you authentically, and how can we step into that? And so there's a lot of coaching involved to kind of, get them to that place.
Exactly.
That has to be an enormous advantage. I mean, I never thought of that. Was a great question. I never thought of it, but that's so true, right? And because, especially when it comes to marketing, that's when most people, they put these walls. I can't do this and I can't do that, and that's not me or whatever, right? Yeah. And sometimes you just have to begin to break down those walls and say, no, you're perfect for this, or you're very good at this, and you have to somewhat, bring that out of them and say, no, you got to build that confidence because it's good. And so, having that psychology background and reading coaching, it's got to be a tremendous advantage. Yeah,
that's fantastic. What would you say, having worked with, because obviously you worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, what's your experience been like as an entrepreneur yourself, like behind the scenes?
I mean, it is terrifying sometimes, a lot of the times, but totally worth it. I think, the biggest struggle for me before was that I liked design work, but I didn't thrive in a corporate environment. That just wasn't for me. I didn't want someone telling me what my next, what my goal should be. I wanted to decide that for myself. And I really wanted to work with clients that felt really aligned. And so, working for an agency or a big corporation, you don't get to choose your clients. So it's really nice. I get to choose who I work with, and that to me has been incredibly meaningful and incredibly rewarding. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of the beauties.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
One of the beauties of entrepreneurship is, like you said, it has elements that are sort of just, the buck stops with you, right? So I mean, it's like there's that aspect of it. You work just as hard, if not more, but you have that freedom to say, like, I get to work with the people I want to work with. I get to work the way I want to work. I get to do things the way I want to do them. And there is a freeing aspect to it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And, before quarantine, before everyone worked from home, that wasn't a totally normal thing for everyone to have that freedom. And so that was a beautiful thing, too, is like, I can work from home with my dog, and then I can take a break to work out in the middle of the day, and just having that flexibility is really amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always call it the Saturday kind of paradox, in that, like, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have to work Saturday, but sometimes you don't have to work on a Tuesday. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If something's happening, you can just not schedule people on
Exactly.
that day.
Yeah.
But, there's no getting around, like, if there's a client you want to work with and they can only meet on a Saturday and you really want to work with them, you meet them on a Saturday. It's not like, I'm only 9 to 5, it's not a 9 to 5 job, but it has that beautiful flexibility to it.
Yeah. Although I do think boundaries are important.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Sundays, no.
Hence the choose your clients. Choose your clients part. Absolutely. So Meredith, this has been an absolute pleasure. Before we let you go, how can people get in touch with you, reach out, and if they're interested, schedule that 15-minute introductory call? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. My website is magnoliarabbit.com, and there is a button on there, a link for you to schedule a free call, so you can do that at your leisure on the scheduler. You can also find me on Instagram at Magnolia Rabbit Design and on Facebook at Magnolia Rabbit.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
So encourage people to give the website a shout. It's also, not surprisingly, it's a beautifully designed website.
Thank you.
It's really, talk about, like, what you said, everything kind of melding together. Even the font of Magnolia Rabbit just feels like Magnolia.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe it, but, like, when you see it, you'll get what I'm failing to describe in words. But definitely,
it's the visual. You got to go see it.
Exactly. You have to go check it out. For sure. Meredith, thanks so much.
Meredith, thank you so much.
Thank
yes,
you.
I'm sure.
It's a pleasure.
And the best of luck.
All right. Since we rotate here, we'll switch gears just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit to a little finance.
But that was good. That was good. So it's funny because we have all different type of entrepreneurs come here, but it's interesting when you have somebody that designs, right? Mm-hmm. And as you know, I don't have my right side of the brain is not as good as whatever's the creative side is not as creative as the math side, right? For me, it's like numbers, black and white. But I'm always intrigued how important, to a certain respect, that is in any business. It doesn't matter what business you are, and again, more today than ever because you're so it's social media constantly out there. But how important that is really to make sure that message that you have come across, right? And it's something that you and I kind of battle every day, the message that we have to bring across to our clients. It's like, the calming message, the excitement message, bring them, comment when things aren't going well, and, don't let them get too high when things are going really well, and always coming back to, what's important in the long term, right?
Absolutely. Which is, it's so key. It's really key, and and it doesn't matter what business you're in, because it's expressing, I think the beautiful thing is you need to know what you're about, what your business is about, and really as we've learned, I think even every year that we've been in business, you're trying to learn a little bit more who are the people that we really like to work with and help. Because everyone thinks, I think at the beginning, I don't have a niche. I'll do anything for anybody.
Right.
And then the longer you're in business, the more you realize, A, you can't do everything for everybody.
Right, exactly.
Right? But also, B, you don't want to. Like there is something, and it doesn't have to be a niche in the sense of like a particular target market. Like I only do financial advice for people between the ages of 25 and 23, and 27.
Right.
Right. It's more, this is the type of work that I like to do. This is what I enjoy helping people do. We've realized how much we love working with people on the financial planning and families and small businesses. Right, and you just over time you realize that, but then the key is if you can express that in marketing, then you really get across to people.
Exactly,
You
and
want
that's so
those
important
things to match.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, and listen, we've come across many potential clients that just want us to do things that we're just not comfortable. It's not what we do best, and so we say, sorry, but and we say, if that's what you want, you got to look for somebody else, because we're not going to do that, because it's not our forte.
Yeah.
It's something that we don't truly believe in, first and foremost, and second of all, it's not something that we feel very comfortable with. So, we wouldn't take you as a client and try it on you, because that wouldn't be fair, right? And I think that's, like you said, little by little, you realize there are certain things that we do very, very well, right? And the longer you work, the more you even continue to say, we do this extremely well. How do we make sure that people understand what it is we're here for and what it is we can do for them?
Yep, and I think the more your brand reflects that, then people, I think, gravitate towards it.
Exactly.
Then the people who are the ones who are like, I can tell that this person. Did you see it sometimes? Like when you were speaking to a business owner, to a business, or seeing their website, and then their niche is you.
Yeah.
You sense it. This is something I want to work with.
Exactly.
And use this person to do it. Whereas if you go to your, it's almost like the difference between walking into a shop, that the shop is, you love music and it's a music shop, versus going on Amazon, right? Amazon might have all the same music things, but you're never going to feel like Amazon is there for me. Like they gravitate towards my niche.
No, that's true.
Right? Whereas when you walk into a store, you put our Mr. Zerpi and my mom in a Christmas store, right? They might sell all the same things in Amazon, but she'll sense, the Christmas store is made for me.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
Amazon says, it's just there. It's not
just
really made
yeah.
for me.
Exactly.
It just happens to sell the same things.
Yeah. No doubt about it. You just have to make sure that whom you are and those services that you particularly are very good at, you make sure that those are portrayed in, whether it be your website or your social media, extremely well, because people then will gravitate towards you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's part of marketing, part of keeping growing.
Part of every business.
Every business. I mean, especially in uncertain times, you got to be really focused.
Yeah.
On what you do.
Is that a lead to our next?
No. So what have you been?
Uncertain times.
Well, we are.
We have such certain times these days.
But I would. I was just thinking. I just wanted to, finance-wise, just wanted to kind of see what you have been seeing, what you've been thinking. It's been several shows since you and I did one. Mike and I have done some finance segments.
Although we do talk a lot at the office, so you probably have a very good idea how
what I'm thinking.
For the audience, okay, yeah.
I gotta pretend like I don't know the answer.
Like you don't know the answer. But anyway, so it's interesting because when I came in, Jerry and I were talking about mortgage rates, right? And so the 30-year mortgage has broken 8% barrier, which hasn't done that since I don't even know when, in 2006 or I can't remember when, right?
As you can see,
but it's been so those are events. But I know you wanted to touch just quickly on something for the Latinos, which I think is very important. So I don't know if you want to. I know we've discussed it before in our show,
right? But saw some great. A couple shout outs here. The original post was Keith Smith sharing the great work of Virgil Velasco. We've had Keith on, we've had Virgil on from Storyhouse Realty, talking about how, with the help of Ricardo Cruz from UVA Community Credit Union, Virgil was able to help a family get a home. And one of the main means they could do this was because you can get mortgages now with an ITIN. So if you don't have a social security number, right, you with an ITIN, which is, I forget it's something taxpayer identification number.
Right.
But the key, everyone's going to call it an individual taxpayer identification number. Everyone's going to call it an ITIN. You can, in fact, get a mortgage. So if you're out there thinking, oh man, I don't have a social security number, I'll never be able to own my own home, or I need to put that off for X number of years till I finally get one, right? That's not the case. You can, in fact, with an ITIN, get a mortgage. And I don't know if you want to kind of repeat that in Spanish for our Latino audience. It's important. Because shout out Philadelphia Soto, Philadelphia wife of our good friend Johnny Ornelas, kind of pinged us there and said, hey, this is happening. I was like, yeah, we had talked with Ricardo about this 1 or 2 years ago when it was like first coming to fruition.
Correct, yeah.
And beautiful to see it in fruition. So thanks to Philadelphia for kind of highlighting that for us. But we just wanted to kind of share that with our
Absolutely,
our
absolutely. Lo que Alex estaba diciendo es que si ustedes están buscando una casa y no tienen el número de Social Security, pero tienen el número de ITIN o ITIN, depende cómo lo pronuncian, pueden hoy día buscar o conseguir una hipoteca con el banco con ese número. Es decir, no necesita un número de Social Security, puede usar ese número para conseguir una hipoteca, para poder comprar una casa. Y esto es nuevo y no sé cuántos meses hace que puedan hacer esto. Relativamente nuevo. Así que si ustedes están interesados en buscar una casa, comprar una casa, por fin pueden y pueden también obtener una hipoteca con los bancos, con ciertos bancos que dan hipotecas con ese número. Así y es una manera fantástica de invertir en su casa, ¿no?
Sí, claro que sí. Perfecto.
Gracias.
Ese es nuestro anuncio de servicio público para hoy, para nuestra audiencia.
So and it's it's interesting, and again although this particular research piece was done back in the 90s, right? We had done an enormous research piece looking at the repayment of mortgages and the default in mortgage or in any mortgage particular product, right? And interesting enough, the Hispanic population, right, had the lowest default rate than anybody else, right? And the reason we had studied that was because there was a certain group of, they were paying at that time even higher interest rates than most people, right? And so obviously very attractive mortgages. They were selling at much greater discounts than the rest of the mortgages, but we wanted to get a feel for the default rate, and we realized these are better than regular mortgages, right? So one of the important things is that it's kind of the Hispanic heritage is my family comes first, and my home is where my family lives, so I will do whatever necessary to make sure that I continue to save my home, right? I'll do anything else, I'll skip, buying a Coca-Cola, buying a café con leche, with leche condensada.
Yes.
I'll skip that first, right, before paying that mortgage. So that's really, it's wonderful to be able to see that these people can now, buy a home and afford, hopefully afford and buy a home.
Absolutely. Well, just to show you, right, some of these you gotta dig deep. You can't just, because I think a lot of people, if you didn't tell them that, they'd assume, oh man, yeah, Latinos, they have less money, they'll default.
Yeah, exactly.
Easily, right?
Yeah.
And said, no, it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It really is amazing.
Because I think our culture, like you said, family first. I notice Latino culture, we don't like debt.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I think part of the reason we don't like it is because we feel strongly the importance of living up to your word and paying your debt when once you have acquired it.
Exactly.
So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Just we'll also see a lot of Latinos that when they're successful, there's kind of that urge to let me pay off my mortgage entirely. This way I don't have the debt anymore. And we have to kind of talk them out of it a little bit. Talk them out of that a little bit, depending on what the mortgage rate is.
Yeah, and I always tell people, you're never going to find, even though today's rates are high, you're never going to find a rate as low as your mortgage rate because it's collateralized by a home, right?
Well, and even today, right? Even with mortgage
even today, yes, absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
If you would go to a personal loan, it's not 8, it's going to be 15, 16.
Absolutely, exactly. And so the point is that you always have to make sure that you have some cash flow for emergencies, right? So if, don't empty out your bank account, your retirement account, and I've seen people do that. They empty out the retirement account to pay off their mortgage. I said, okay, what if something happens?
Yeah.
Now you got to go back to the bank, try to borrow that money,
and it's
closing costs, higher interest rate. So, it's one of those things where you really have to think about, paying off that particular debt. All the other debts, by all means, don't even get them, especially credit cards.
I've even seen research like this on emergency funds versus paying off student loans, because I've seen some articles saying, remember, depending on what your student loan interest rate is, if you should be doing both simultaneously. Paying off your minimum payment, right? But don't go above and beyond at the expense of your emergency fund, because then if an emergency does happen, the most likely place people will turn to pay off an emergency expense if they don't have it in their bank account is a credit card. And the credit card interest rate is going to be, as an example, right, if you've got one of those, not a grad, not an unsubsidized loan, but certain unsubsidized student loans, you're talking maybe 5.5%,
right,
maybe 6%. Credit card is going to be 20. So in other words, if you suck out your emergency fund to pay off your student loan faster, because I don't want to be paying 6%, and then an emergency happens, now you're paying 20.
Yeah.
So it's about balancing, and it's not, you don't not pay any of your student loans and yet your credit score destroyed, right? But you have to balance. It's not always, there's no one size fits all. This is what you do in all circumstances.
Exactly.
You have to balance.
And I think people have to realize, so there's, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So, right now we're seeing 8% mortgage rates, granted, student loans may be, 5, 6, 7%. But interest rates on the other side, meaning for investment purposes, they can range between 5%, or actually a little higher than 5%, just in government bonds, right, to up to 13% in different type of bonds. So you can create a very balanced portfolio in bonds and have the same rate or a higher rate. In other words, invest in the same rate or higher rate than your loans, which at that point you can feel comfortable, right? Because all right, I don't have to pay it off, but I'm earning some good money here, so that I'm not really, to a certain respect, losing.
Yeah, you're not losing the interest rate. You're kind of maintaining the level of debt.
Yeah, and I think more than, over the last 2 years, last year and this year, I would say from an investment point of view, the bond market has been the most interesting market of them all.
Basically since the beginning of last year.
Yeah, exactly. The opportunities to create a custom strategy, where you can take advantage of changes in interest rates, whether it be, yield curve strategies or structural strategies or credit strategies, are unbelievable, right? And thank goodness, ETFs in today's world, there are so many of them that you can find the right combination that will put you in a situation that you are actually, making money in an environment where it's difficult, to make money. So, it's, like I said, there's pros and cons to everything. Rates are going up, and it's making it very difficult on some people that need to buy homes or borrowers. But on the other end, if you're not in that category, you should be making a very good, income on that particular sector.
And even if you're in that category, depending how you balance things,
sure,
you can help compensate for that. You can at least make something to help. You can make something on the investment side that helps that interest rate that you're paying on debt be not quite as bad.
Exactly.
Because you're at least making some passive income on the side there.
Yeah.
No, it really is. The sad part, I would say, we've probably seen this, 9 out of 10 portfolios that come to us, that people who are out there, the stock part is diversified,
right,
all these different stocks, and not only diversified, but sort of specific. In other words, in someone's stock portfolio, you will see small cap stocks, large cap stocks, alternative stocks, green energy stocks, right? You'll see all those things split out, and then you'll see like one bond fund, which is total bond market fund.
Exactly, yeah.
And so like the one part that can do so much for you is the one part that, because I think it's more, people have a more difficult time grasping, just gets all lumped into one mutual fund, which can't take advantage. And you look at the rate, and it's, of course, if it's all one mutual fund lumped together, you look at the interest rate, it's like 3%. And you're like, oh my goodness, you could get treasuries that are higher than this.
Exactly, yeah.
But people, I think, have a harder time knowing, because stocks are simple, right?
And it's not just people. It's it's investment advisors. And it's just in an area that they're comfortable with, and that's just. And I think part of it also is, a lot of advisors, they just kind of throw that into their investment models, and the models will they just say, boom, here it is, bonds, buy this, and as opposed to being able to sit there and say, some of this doesn't make sense anymore because there's so many other opportunities, that you got to do the research, you got to look for it, but they're there, and if you work hard enough, you can see that the opportunities are enormous.
Especially depending how far back your model goes. If you have a 20-year model, right, it does not. The 20-year model from now starts 2000, If you had a 30-year model starting, it would start in 1990. Not a single one of those will have this interest rate. You'd have to have basically a 40-year, 45-year computer model for that model to even take an input from the last time interest rates rose this fast, this high, this quickly.
That's right. Yeah.
So those computer models they don't have the input. If you were looking at a 20, 30-year model, you don't even have the input in there necessary. That thing is just going to spit out. By the aggregate, bond prices will go up.
Exactly.
Right? So, no, bond prices are going down.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
the bond prices are
exactly.
going down, but interest rate, yield, is going up.
Yeah.
So that's where you need to put things together. And I think also, I would imagine a lot of your average investment advisor that doesn't have bond experience. If you looked at the 2010s, basically, the last decade, there was no point really delving into the different types of bonds out there. You weren't going to make yield in bond. Everyone was in stocks. You had to be in stocks to make yield.
Correct.
Now it's important. It actually is relevant to know your different types of bonds and to know, what is a 0 to 3-year treasury? What is a 5 to 7 year? Why are they different? Why does this one have a higher yield? Does this one have more risk? What is a floating rate bond? How many people have never heard of floating rate bond before last year? How many people still haven't heard of it?
Probably, yeah.
Or even know what it is?
A lot, yeah. It's and not only that. There's been a few funds that have just been created over the last year, right?
Didn't exist.
So that tells you a lot about what's important, what's out there, and what's where the opportunities lie. No, and it's true. Again, it's a diversification concept, right? You want to make sure you're able to diversify your portfolio in different ways, but. And think of it this way: so if you bought the total stock market of the U.S., boom, you bought that, right? You wouldn't have the ability to then basically allocate different funds depending on what's happening in different sectors of the market. And we've seen that over the last 2-3 years where, value has done well, then tech has done well, and then growth, and then small cap, they change, and been dramatic changes all through the year.
You have everything in one
Exactly.
fund.
If you have all in one fund, you're not being able to then say, hey, I got to allocate more of this into this particular sector because it didn't do well last year, right? And it's the same thing with bonds. You just buy the whole bond market. It's not giving you what you really need, right? And again, we live in a world those opportunities are there. You can basically diversify as much as you can in the equity sector, where, like you said, you can buy a sector where you look at biotechnology stocks or clean energy stocks or AI stocks. So there's so many opportunities depending where you want to go, right? And in the bond market, they exist also now. So you just have to do the same kind of homework and say, what's best for the next 3 to 6 months or 12 months?
Exactly.
What's the best portfolio out there?
Think about last year. What was the difference in return last year between holding the total bond market versus holding floating rate?
So the bond market last year was down 14%, right? Short-term floaters were up 2%. Intermediate floaters were down like 6%.
So just imagine the difference. And you would say, bonds, there can't be that much difference. There's a 16-point swing between short-term floating rate bonds and the basic total bond market.
Exactly.
So
that's a big deal.
It's a huge difference.
And it's a bigger deal because, remember, bonds historically are the anchor to windward. In other words, when things went bad, then bonds is what protected your portfolio. Last year was the worst bond market in history. So just when the stock market was down anywhere between, whatever,
what was this,
15
last year?
Yeah, 15, somewhere down like 30%, right? Some areas of the so anywhere between down 15 to 30%. You were hoping that your bonds would protect your portfolio. Now it's down 14%. So no matter what, if you were diversified and only had bonds, your whole portfolio is down 14% or more.
Yep.
That's a big impact on your net worth.
Depending on your life situation, that can be.
Sure.
We've talked about. If you're 25. You have time. Bonds are mathematics. They will come back to par. So it's not that it goes down 14% and then stays down 14% for the rest of existence, right? Stocks, obviously, they haven't rebounded fantastically this year, but, sooner or later you expect them to rebound, right? But if you're retired and you were pulling money out, you're in that placid boat of market crashes, there was no protection, my whole portfolio is down 20, but I have no choice, I need to pull money
exactly,
out.
yeah.
And now I can't participate.
And you'll never
in the
make that
upside.
back.
You'll never make it back.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's just so important to be looking at. I think people know they need to look at different sectors of stocks. You really have to do, especially in this environment, you have to do the same thing with bonds.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can't just throw it all in one bond fund and hope for the best.
Yeah, I agree
You have to be
100%.
diligent
I agree
on both
with you
sides.
100%.
Yeah. Exactly. So where do you see things going from here? I mean, we're obviously, we've had a lot of questions, real estate wise, inflation wise, economy wise. Where do you kind of see things going since maybe the last time you and I talked about this on air?
So I guess, you and I have spoken about...
Not fair to say it. I'll rephrase it. So it's not fair to ask where do you see things going because we don't have the crystal ball, but what are potential things that people should keep in mind that are possibilities?
Yeah. I think for me there are two big risks out there. One is that I think the news media and everybody's trying to make it sound like we've now conquered inflation, right? Inflation's down. They keep talking inflation's down, inflation's down. Well, the last number, inflation really wasn't down, and you're looking at inflation at like 3.6% to 4%. Yes. Did we get used to 9% and 7%, and that's why we think that 3 to 4% is good? Well, the answer is no. 3% is terrible.
Yeah.
That means that the value of everything you have is declining by that amount, right, or more, right? And second of all, if you look at the inflation numbers for food, rent, housing, energy, right, it's still very high. So that's what concerns me the most is that, there's a sense that, okay, inflation's done. We don't have to worry about that. And my feeling is no, it's not done. It's still something that we need to make sure that we account for going forward. And then the economy is just, this housing market is probably a housing market that we've never, ever experienced before because we have interest rates are whatever, 7 to 8% in mortgage rates. That's got very high. Housing prices haven't dropped in certain sectors of the market in particular. So in the areas where, they just seem to be going up, right? Inventory is, you're not going to see the kind of inventory you saw in the past because if somebody has a 3% mortgage, even if they want to sell their house to buy a bigger house, they're not going to do it because they're going to have an 8% mortgage. There's just no way I can afford that. So unless they have to move, either somebody, God forbid, passes away, it's like, I got to sell my parents' home or whatever, right? Or I have to move into Chicago, or move into San Francisco, wherever else they're moving to, Florida, right?
Hopefully not San Francisco, the housing prices there.
Yeah, I know, really. So unless they have to move, right? And even then, some people's like, well, instead of, I might just rent it, right? Because it's better for me because of the rate I have. So you're not seeing that inventory come back. And just the last few days, you saw that, housing starts on single-family homes was down. So that's not a good picture for anybody looking for a single-family home. Multifamily homes, permits were up. So we're seeing a situation where the housing market has the challenge of high interest rates, the challenge is there's no inventory. So what happens? Where's that going? I mean, I really don't. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but that's a challenge.
Like 2008, because I think people always worry. Okay, real estate crash again, right? But the problem is, for like you and I always say, nothing ever happens the same way twice, right?
Exactly.
So you can't just look at it. Okay, mortgage rates went up a little bit in 05, 06, housing crash. Mortgage rates went up. No, you can't have a housing crash when there's no inventory.
That's right.
Yeah. Right? By definition, prices collapse when the demand, right, does not keep up with supply. If there's more demand than there is supply, it doesn't matter what the interest rate, the mortgage rate is. You can't, so things never happen the same way twice. You can't just look at mortgage rates and say, mortgage rates go up, housing crash, mortgage rate go up. There's other variables that are in play now that complicate that picture. Not to say that it can't happen, but the picture's not that simple.
Yeah, and the issue also is to think about, baby boomers, right? A lot of them are retiring or have retired, and, some will like to downsize, right? So if they're selling their home at, I'm throwing these numbers out because I have no clue, right? But let's say they sell their home for $1 million and they're downsizing to a $700,000 home, they can pay that off in cash.
Yeah.
Well, a first-time homeowner, chances are he doesn't have $700,000 paying cash.
Think about the trade there, right? a $1 million home entered the market and a $750,000 home left the market. So
Yeah.
they bought that one, right? But the problem is, if you can't afford the $1 million one, that doesn't help you.
It doesn't,
That's
yeah.
like saying, there was a used car and a new car. There was a used car at $30,000 and then a Tesla that's $100,000. And the guy who owned the Tesla sold the Tesla and puts the Tesla for sale and buys the used car. The guy who's just entering and needs a car is like, oh man, my choices are now an $80,000 Tesla. Congratulations.
Exactly.
That doesn't help me much.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So those are, those are challenges. And of course, we have the, unfortunately, all the political unrest around the globe that creates uncertainty. And as you and I know, the worst things in the markets is always uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
The markets don't like that, right? So there's challenges. Now, historically, you look at all the Iraq War, the Gulf War, all the wars that we've had in the past. Typically, bond markets I shouldn't say that. Typically, stock markets over the next 12 months have done very well, right? So,
Yeah, it's always that-
so it's
the opposite of what you
you
think.
think, oh my God, things are going to they're going to go to hell in a handbasket, something like that, right?
Hell in a handbasket.
Sometimes that doesn't happen, right? So the idea is like, I'm going all into cash because this is happening. It could be the wrong move, right? And the bond market too. The bond market typically, in a scenario where there isn't other, events going on in bonds have a tendency, rates come down because there's that safety. People rush into U.S. Treasuries big time, right? So Treasuries do very well. The rest of the market, whether it be mortgages or corporates or high yield bonds, will stay out at those levels. So you see what they call, spread widening, which means like, let's say the 10-year is trading at a 5%, it goes to 4%. And bonds, corporate bonds are trading at 6%. They'll stay at 6%. So that spread
not
has
the
now
difference
widened. Exactly.
between-
So
Yep.
So those things occur, right? And they just, those windows are a little tighter. So, again, it's uncertainty, unrest, and so the challenges are there. And, my perspective has always been, you don't try to guess and time markets because the chances are you're going to get it wrong. And if you get it right, good, right? But if you get it wrong, you're making a big mistake. So it's always best, as you and I say, figure out what your needs are. What's the perfect strategy for me in order to achieve the goals that I need to achieve. Find what that is, find that perfect balance in your portfolio, and stick to it. And yes, on the sides, and we always talked about it. 10, 15%. There's tactical opportunities.
Rate bond
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
In other words, within that, there's pieces you can say, how do I better position this part of my portfolio so that if X happens,
Exactly.
I am less affected, right?
Exactly.
But my feeling is you always try to control the degree to which you're affected, not the magnitude, not the direction. You try to control, you worry about the magnitude. In other words, if you want to be aggressive, then your goal is to make the portfolio that when the market is up, you're up more. When the market is down, you know that when the market's down, you're going to be down more, right? If you want to be conservative, if that's what your needs are, you want to make it so that if the market's up big, you're up a little less, but if the market's down big, you're down a little. So you make those adjustments, but you never try to beat the direction. You never sit there and say, I think the market's going to go down, so I'm going to put everything in cash.
Exactly.
Because this way, when the market's negative, I'll be even. That's where you run into trouble. You can't try to guess the direction. What you do is say, how exposed do I want to be to the magnitude of it? And that's what determines your risk level there. You can't try to do this inverse stuff like, I want to be up when the market's down, because that's when you can get into a whole lot of trouble.
Sure. I mean, just think of those. So I think back during the Gulf War, right, from the time it started to a year later, I think the market was up like 36%. So imagine if you said, oh, me and Gulf War, I'm going to cash. That's 36%. You'll never make that back. There's no way, So it's, again, whatever strategy fits you best, just stick to it. And on the margins is where you make little tactical strategies in order to improve, like you said, the risk reward.
Exactly.
So
I think it's great advice for people.
Thank you.
Look, time flies. Time flies. We are.
Well, you and I, listen. I mean, we have these conversations, often in the office, and certainly like every Monday. And sometimes it's like, let's stick to an hour, guys, and it's like an hour and a half. We're still chit-chat
Still
about
talking
this or
about
that,
it.
but it's important, you know.
Which is
I mean,
important. That's how we made decisions for
Exactly.
our clients, you know, to making sure you talked about things and
Yeah.
hear the different ideas.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a pleasure.
Same here.
It's been
Been
fun
fun.
to be back with you.
It's been a long time. I don't think you and I have been together
Yeah, but I
for...
think 3 weeks ago, I don't think it was you and me. I think it was Michael and me.
Yeah, it's
So
been a long time.
It's been at least a month.
Yeah,
So it's good to be back on with you.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure. Next week we're going to have on Megan Blevins. She is the owner of Center Yourself Holistics. So we're going to have
wow.
another great entrepreneur joining us next week. Always look forward to it. Be sure, as always, our audience, thanks for watching today. Be sure to send us. I mean, if you've got entrepreneurs, great people, you know that you're like, oh man, I would love for this person to be featured on Today Mañana, send us your way. There's no cost for the entrepreneurs we have on to come on. We just love chatting with people and getting to know what they do.
Definitely, it's a lot of fun. It's
Hearing
good. I enjoyed their their story and their perseverance
And their perspective.
and perspective. Yes,
It's always fantastic. So be sure to join us next week at that time. Of course, big thank yous. Thanks to you. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Judah behind the camera. Thanks to Emergent Financial Services for presenting. Thanks to our fantastic partners, Castle Hill Cider, Matias Yon Realty, Credit, Sirius Insurance, Forward, Adelante. Thank you all for joining us. I'll shout it again. Thanks, Philadelphia, for pointing us in the direction
Absolutely.
of the
Thank you.
great
Yeah.
work
Gracias.
being done by Virgil and Ricardo and Keith and all those, all the people that are helping Latino community continue to build that equity and build that generational wealth. So love to see it. Love to see it. Keep up the great work. I'll look forward to seeing all of you next week. But until that time, as we like to close it out on the show, hasta mañana.